The spotlight may be bright, but it is also bright enough to expose the dark corners that few dare to face. Jamie Dornan, the man once called the sex symbol of the new generation, recently surprised the public by sharing something he had never said before. Fame was never his original goal. I never dreamed of being the center of attention. I just wanted to live with art, not to become a role model or an icon for anyone. Jamie said in a rare moment of relaxation. From a Belfast boy to a silver screen legend. Jamie started with a very simple desire, to act. Not to be praised, not to appear on the cover of a magazine, and certainly not to have millions of people put expectations of perfection on his shoulders. But when 50 Shades of Grey was released, a different world opened up. A world where every eye is on him. Every move is discussed. Every private emotion is analyzed as a public issue. And suddenly, he is no longer Jamie. He becomes Mr. Grey. The invisible pressure. When fame gets out of hand. There are times when I really want to go back to the time before it all started. I miss the feeling of being a normal person. Jamie says it's not because he regrets it. It's because he's traded peace, privacy, and sometimes the real version of himself. But the art is still there, and that's what keeps him going. What keeps Jamie in front of the camera is not fame. It's the love of the story, of each role that seeps into his blood and heart. If I can make the audience feel something, even for a few seconds, then it all makes sense. And maybe, that's the real Jamie Dornan. Not the man who steps off the cover of a magazine. Not the perfect image created by the media. But an artist, trying to keep his truth in the midst of a sea of glory. Jamie Dornan and the loneliness that cannot be named. There are moments audiences will never see. The moment Jamie sits alone in a hotel room after a movie premiere, still dressed in the finery of perfection, but his eyes are hazy and quiet. He says, "A lot of people think I have it all. But sometimes, I feel like I'm standing in the middle of a room full of cheers, and I can't hear a sound. A halo filled with people, but an empty heart." The fame brings him recognition, money, the admiring gazes of millions. But gradually, he realizes he no longer knows who really sees Jamie, and who is looking at Mr. Grey. Who loves him for who he is, and who loves the aura that surrounds him. And when the questions start to outnumber the answers, that's when loneliness appears. Sleepless nights, and the recurring question, who am I? Acting requires Jamie to constantly transform. Today a complicated billionaire. Tomorrow a traumatized fugitive. The day before yesterday a man running from his memories. And when all the lights go out, he stands in front of the mirror, sees himself, but is not sure if it is still himself. Sometimes I fear that if I take away all the layers, there will be nothing left inside. Dakota Johnson, the rare person who sees that loneliness. No explanation. No effort. Just one look, and she knows. Not a noisy love. Not a romantic salvation. But an understanding between two souls who know the price of fame. Dakota once whispered, backstage after everyone had left. "You don't have to be strong all the time. Someone has to be tired, Jamie." Jamie was silent. But silence is the heart's way of answering. And sometimes, just one person who understands is enough to keep you from falling. The keeper of light in the darkness. There are things Jamie has never said in public. Not because he is afraid, but because he does not know how to express those feelings in words. And that is related to Dakota Johnson. Not love in the fairy tale sense. They do not hold hands when walking down the street. No sweet promises are exchanged. No photos, no hints, no romantic story for the public to see. But the feelings between them go deeper than what people can understand. It is the feelings of two souls who have seen the weakest parts of each other. The fateful moment. Jamie once said, in a very private, off-camera conversation. That day, he had just gone through 10 hours of continuous interviews. All the questions revolved around the perfect image. People wanted him to be Mr. Grey even in real life. When the backstage door closed, he sat down, exhausted, breathing heavily and his shoulders heavy as if carrying the sky. Dakota walked over, saying nothing. She just sat next to him, placing a gentle hand on his back. No comfort. No questions. Just presence. At that moment, I realized, there are people who don't need you to shine. They just need you to breathe. Jamie said it silently. The whole room seemed to stop moving. Dakota didn't try to heal him. She wasn't the one who came to change his life. She simply stayed when the whole world left. Sometimes, it's that peace that keeps people from falling apart. If it weren't for Dakota in those years, I don't know if I would still be the person I am now. A gentle confession, but enough to make the heart suddenly tighten. No need to define. They don't need to name that connection. Because things deep enough don't need to be named to exist. There are people who pass through our lives and leave a light. Dakota was that light, for Jamie. The unspoken promise. Not all promises are spoken aloud. There are promises exchanged with eyes, with presence, with silences where two hearts understand each other. Between Jamie and Dakota, there is such a promise. The evening after the last scene of the last movie. The film crew had left. The large studio suddenly became strangely empty. The two of them stood in the middle of that space, as if standing in the middle of a journey that had ended. The 50 Shades trilogy did not just end a project. It closed a part of life, a part of heart, a part of memory that the whole world had seen, but no one understood. Dakota looked at Jamie and asked softly, "From tomorrow, how will we live our lives?" Jamie did not answer immediately. His eyes seemed to want to say many things, but he was afraid that if he said them, everything would disappear. Finally, he said only one sentence, very quietly. "No matter where, no matter what happens, we will not leave each other alone. Okay?" Dakota smiled. Not a happy smile, but the smile of someone holding something precious in their heart. Okay. No handshake. No hug. No tears. But neither of them forgot that night. They moved on, but always together. Never publicly. Never affirmed. Never denied. They lived their own lives. Jamie with his family, with his roles, with the struggle between ego and expectation. Dakota with her artistic roles, with the tenderness hidden behind the strong features. But in their weakest moments, they still reached out to each other, even if it was just a short text. "Are you okay?" A call in the middle of the night without video. A very light touch on the shoulder at an award ceremony in front of thousands of eyes. No one knows. No one understands. But they know. They promised. A promise that does not need to be repeated a second time. Because there are people who do not belong to each other in the way the world expects. But they belong to each other in the deepest part of their hearts. And sometimes, that is the most lasting thing. The moment that almost lost each other. There are relationships that don't need a name. But just a small crack is enough to make the heart tremble. And for Jamie and Dakota, that moment came silently but painfully. A year after the series ended. Jamie was busy with a tight filming schedule. He threw himself into work as if to escape from emotions that had not yet been named. Dakota, on the other hand, chose independent art projects, quiet, subtle, full of depth, as her way of healing herself. They still kept the old promise. Don't leave each other alone. But life is sometimes cruel in the quietest way. It doesn't break a promise with noise, but with distance. Day after day, the messages became less frequent. The calls stopped midway. The shoulder touches at award ceremonies became more awkward. Not because they stopped caring. Because they were both afraid. Afraid that if they took another step, there would be no turning back. The moment happened at an international awards show. Dakota arrived first. Jamie appeared later, with a perfect smile for the media. But when their eyes met, just for a second, they both knew the distance was greater than they thought. Dakota turned away first. Not because she was cold, but because if she stayed, she would be weak.